Last night, we witnessed the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers get eliminated by the Atlanta Hawks in Game 7 at home in the second round of the playoffs. So obviously, we need to talk about it. They finished the year as the team that should easily be labeled the biggest disappointment. They came up small and blew so many opportunities to win this series and advance, and now the franchise has once again found itself in complete disarray. I do not hide from the fact that I have been a 76ers fan my whole life, so last night was incredibly painful to watch for me personally, and now I have so many thoughts running through my mind that I need to get out, so what better way to do so than to make a video about it. There are so many things that have gotten this team into the situation that they find themselves in, and in this video, we will be discussing all of it. I'll be going over the mistakes made along the way, calling out every person responsible for this atrocity of a collapse, and then where the team can even go from here. Before we start though, as always, it would be very much appreciated for you to subscribe to the channel, as it really helps out a ton. And now with that being said, let's begin. There simply is no other place to start this discussion than with the play of Ben Simmons. In the past, many of you probably already know me as someone who has been one of the most pro-Ben guys out there. He's quite simply the best perimeter defender that the NBA has to offer right now, he pushes the pace in transition, and his passing ability and court vision set up the shooters around him beautifully. Those are all things that did continue to be the case in this series and even last night, as Ben had Trae Young in lockdown pretty much the entire game defensively, and also finished the game with 13 assists. However, his unwillingness to even look at the basket to try to score is simply inexcusable, and there is absolutely no denying that it held the team back in this series. I cannot excuse it, nobody should excuse it. There was one play late in the game where he beat Gallinari on a spin move to get to the basket, and then instead of rising up for a dunk or a layup because he was wide open, he tried to dish it to Matisse Thybulle for one instead, which resulted in Thybulle getting fouled and only making one of the 2 free throws. Now, did that play cost the team the game? No, of course not. Was it a perfect representation of Simmons and his mentality throughout the series though? Yes, it definitely was. The Sixers honestly don't need Simmons to score a lot of points to succeed as long as he continues to bring it in the other areas that I mentioned previously, but the real issue is that it's impossible for him to even do so in the fourth quarter of games with his passive mindset, along with this next point about him that I'm about to bring up. Ben Simmons just set the record for the lowest free throw percentage in NBA playoff history. Yes, you heard that correctly. Down the stretch of games, the Hawks utilized hack-a-Ben strategies, knowing he would miss free throws, and as a result, the Sixers could not rely on him to handle the ball late in games. This free throw struggle is likely what affects him most mentally too, because you can clearly tell that he's going out of his way to avoid getting to the free throw line at times, rather than attacking the basket and embracing contact. Simmons has so much talent, but the mental side of things is what holds him back. I saw a really spot-on quote somewhere that I forget the source of, so my apologies for not being able to source it, but they essentially said that Simmons seems to be so afraid of failure, causing him to avoid shooting altogether at the risk of missing and costing the team, that he actually arrives at said failure nonetheless because of this inaction. Basketball and life in general is all about taking risks, and Simmons refuses to take risks that could potentially help the team a ton in order to stay in the bubble of playing safe. Nothing proves this more than the fact that he only shot 3 total shots in the fourth quarters of the entire series. 3! That's it. It's inexcusable, it hurts to watch, and it let the team down. However, despite everything that I just ranted about, I still firmly believe that there are other factors that played an even bigger part in this team imploding like it did. Believe me, Ben played a part for sure. However, the next thing I'm about to get into is the most glaringly obvious thing that threw the season away, and I simply cannot ignore it. Doc Rivers has been a head coach in the NBA for a long time. He's even coached a team to a championship back in 2008. He's viewed in such high regard by so many people within the league, and his reputation continues to fly high somehow, but I'm not having it anymore. Doc Rivers has coached some of the worst choke jobs the league has ever seen. He's been the figurehead for coming up short for the last decade, and thinking it would change just because he took a job for a new team was naive the whole time. I expressed my concerns about the 76ers hiring him when it happened last offseason. I've remained highly critical of him all season long, even when things looked bright, and literally 1 week ago, I posted a video discussing all of the things he was doing wrong, even though at the time of that video, the Sixers were leading this series 2-1. I saw the writing on the wall from the very beginning, and it makes me sick that I was right, because I so desperately wanted to be wrong and for him to change, but he just didn't. Doc Rivers has coached more blown 3-1 series leads than anyone else in NBA history. He has the very worst winning percentage as a coach in NBA history in closeout games of playoff series, and it's now 2 years in a row that teams with him in charge have become the absolute laughingstock of the NBA because of their implosions. And with him, of course, being in charge of the Clippers last year when they were blowing big leads and choking away a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets in the second round, it just makes the case. Doc is a coach that typically gets along well with players, vibes are usually high for most of the season with him there, and things go great until the meaningful games roll around. He is the most stubborn coach in the NBA when it comes to rotations. He never makes the appropriate adjustments when things are going poorly until it's too late, and time after time, his decisions are what cost the team. The biggest head-scratcher this year was the fact that he absolutely loved running a deep bench in the playoffs, despite that bench and those lineups with the bench that he ran being some of the least effective lineups in the entire postseason. A good representation of this is the fact that when Joel Embiid was on the court in the playoffs, the Sixers outscored their opponents by about 15.1 points per 100 possessions. When he goes to the bench, which usually marks the time that the bench lineup gets subbed in, the team gets outscored by a whopping 13.9 points per 100 possessions, which is an entire 29-point swing. I feel so bad for Joel Embiid because he's always out there getting the team leads, and then when he goes to the bench to get a quick breather, the lead immediately vanishes. Every time that lineup subbed in, it looked like they were fighting for their life just to score a point, and leads would immediately shrink the second they subbed in. It happened time after time after time, and Doc continued to put them out there until the very end, and that's just some of the worst coaching I've ever had to witness. He played for Con Korkmaz big minutes, despite the fact that he was a defensive liability and in a shooting slump. Dwight Howard's minutes were always a net negative, and he never even bothered to experiment with small ball. George Hill played heavy minutes off the bench and gave them nothing, and he would have both Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons on the bench together way longer when every statistical measurement says that the team needs at least one of them out there to function. There was a lot of letdown by the players this series, for sure, but it's so tiring to watch the same poorly constructed game plan put into place while knowing it won't work in the end. So, after all of that, where do they go from here? Well, two things definitely stick out the most. First, firing Doc Rivers needs to happen. There is no second chance for a guy who has been in the league as long as Doc has been, with the track record that he has. Distance yourself as far away from him as possible, and honestly, promote one of the assistants like Sam Cassell to the head job, as he's done a great job as an assistant coach and is more than worthy of getting a chance at a head coaching job. Next, obviously you have to at least test the waters on a Ben Simmons trade. Obviously, his showing in this year's playoffs wasn't ideal, but I don't buy the idea that his trade value is tanked one bit. He's still the best perimeter defender in the NBA, he's still a terrific playmaker, and there will be teams out there that will believe they can fix his mindset mentally to get him to play more aggressive and get the most out of him. Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer has reported that general manager Daryl Morey is already considering the possibility of putting a package package together for players in a trade like Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, or Zach LaVine, and adding players of that caliber could be a terrific move. Obviously, a lot of picks would have to be included, other pieces will be in there as well, but that's the level of player that the team needs to target. You, under no circumstances, trade Ben Simmons just for the sake of trading him and accept lesser value than what he is worth. Right now, it's tough, but Daryl Morey has made a lot of great moves in his career as an executive, and he will be hard at work once again this year. And with that being said, that's essentially all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think the Sixers need to do now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.